Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have very big news coming out of North Korea, China, the Middle East, and Ukraine. But by far our biggest piece of news of the day is coming out of Ukraine, as we have gotten word today from President Zelenskyy that Chinese nationals have allegedly been found fighting on the soil of Ukraine for the Russian side, and this is causing a major diplomatic incident between China and Ukraine today, and this is certainly one to watch. We also have big news as well between the United States and Iran that talks are allegedly going to take place over the next few days or so between those two countries to prevent a major regional war from breaking out in the Middle East. We also have big news on another front that Turkey is still moving equipment down to central Syria as we speak, and we have footage of that today to show you. And we also have news on another front, on the Chinese front of news, that the US and China trade war is heating up so badly that the United States has now put 104% retaliatory tariffs on China as a result of recent escalations. And we also have news out of North Korea that some North Korean soldiers crossed the border into South Korea. There were warning shots fired by the South Koreans, and there's a major border incursion today on the Korean Peninsula. So with that, we have a lot of news to cover pretty much everywhere today, so let's jump into our first post, which goes to War Translated. And this is our biggest story of the day right now. We're getting big news out of Ukraine today that the UAF claims to have captured 2 Chinese citizens in the Donetsk region, which fought as a part of the Russian Federation, and there are documents of these prisoners, bank cards, and personal data indicating they're from China, and the president instructed the foreign minister to immediately contact Beijing and find out how China is going to react to this. And Zelenskyy said, quote unquote, "We have information that there are much more than just 2 Chinese citizens in the occupiers' units, and we are just now finding out all of these facts." So this is truly a bombshell piece of news right here. There are allegedly, according to Zelenskyy, many more than just 2 Chinese citizens fighting on behalf of the Russians, and this could indicate direct involvement by the Chinese government in this war against Ukraine. So of course, that is a very, very big conclusion to make, but based on what we're seeing right now from Zelenskyy and hearing from these soldiers, it sounds like it could be much bigger than actually reported as of this moment, so we're certainly keeping an eye on that. But we do have a video here of the guy that was captured, who is allegedly a Chinese national, basically snitching on his fellow comrades in this Russian unit. So let's take a look at the video and see what he's talking about. Okay, so he appears to be describing maybe a drone battle. He's doing a lot of sounds and a lot of movements, and actually it looks like he's snitching to the 10th degree, actually. He's going through all the motions. He's telling everything. So if there's anything to learn from this individual, he's definitely going to spill the beans on it. He's telling pretty much everything that happened right before his capture, so that is good for the Ukrainians, because they can get all the intel they need to figure out exactly what's really happening with this Chinese national allegedly being here on Ukrainian soil. So here we have it. This is the captured guy, allegedly from China, right here on the video. But with that, we also learn some more information here in our next post, which goes to Max24. And this is actually some more statements from President Zelenskyy out of Ukraine about these alleged Chinese nationals being on their soil. And we see here that President Zelenskyy revealed the details of the capture of Chinese soldiers. He said Ukrainian soldiers engaged in combat with 6 Chinese soldiers in the Donetsk region, after which 2 of the Chinese citizens were captured, and that was one of them we just saw in the video. And he pointed out an important difference. If the North Koreans were in the Kursk region, then the Chinese are already directly on Ukrainian territory. So that is a pretty big revelation right there if that turns out to be indeed 100% true. So we're certainly watching this one, because if this is indicated that China sent these guys here to fight, and so far the only other country which has direct involvement right now, which would be in the Asian region, would be the North Koreans. So we are seeing here that the Chinese are potentially involved as well, at least according to President Zelenskyy. So jumping into our next post, this one goes to the Kyiv Post. And as a result of all this chaos from this capture of these alleged Chinese nationals, Ukraine has now summoned the chief diplomat of China to condemn the reported participation of Chinese military personnel in the war against Ukraine and to demand an explanation, according to the foreign minister of Ukraine. So they are escalating this to the top level officials in China to figure out exactly what's going on and also condemn this activity that they're currently seeing right now from China. So right now the debate is, are these individuals that are currently fighting in Ukraine that are Chinese, are they mercenaries or are they sent by the Chinese government? That is the big question, and that is what Ukraine's trying to find out from the Chinese diplomats as to exactly what the situation is. So we're waiting to hear the answer to that, but certainly a large situation. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to the Kyiv Post once again. And we've also gotten another big revelation from Zelenskyy today on a different front, that Zelenskyy confirms today that there is the presence of Ukrainian troops in Russia's Belgorod region. They're actually in Belgorod, Russia right now, fighting against the Russians. And Zelenskyy said the war must return to where it came from. So once again, they're trying a Kursk-style invasion of Belgorod this time. They just moved a little bit down the border of Russia right into Belgorod, and now they're going right back into the Russian territory. So So Zelenskyy confirmed today they are moving in, and it sounds like they're making pretty good progress, at least according to what we're seeing on the deep state maps. So very good to see, and once again, more confirmation from Zelenskyy. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Insider Paper. So let's move away from our Ukrainian news for just a second and jump into our Middle Eastern news, because right now there's big revelations on the Iranian front of things of what's going on in the Middle East. So right now we hear that 3 Iranian officials told the New York Times that Iran and the United States are planning to meet in Oman on Saturday for indirect talks, and Iran had told Washington that it is open and willing to hold a direct talks if the first round goes well, which is a clear shift in their position. So it looks like Iran is getting a little bit scared, and they're now at least willing to entertain indirect talks for right now, but it's not very clear if it's going to get anywhere. And so far, we've not gotten very hopeful statements from U.S. officials about this really going anywhere. And of course, the Iranians have been making wild statements in the public about how they want to basically destroy the United States and run us down. So this is not very hopeful right here. At least they're speaking. That's a good sign, but I'd really doubt anything's going to come out of it of any material sense. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to open source intel. And the United States president actually weighed in on this situation because, of course, he was asked about it by the media about what he feels is the situation. And so far, we saw a reporter ask the U.S. president, a lot of people think those talks won't lead anywhere because the Iranians will never truly commit. And if diplomacy fails, is the United States, under your leadership, prepared to take military action to destroy Iran's nuclear program and remove the threat? The U.S. president responded, I think that is a possibility, and if the talks fail, Iran's going to be in great danger, and I hate to say it, great danger, because they cannot have a nuclear weapon. And the reporter said, so is that a yes? And the president responded, you know, it's a complicated formula because Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is to it. They just can't have one. So, of course, there appears to be a general commitment to military action if these talks are not successful on the Iranian side. So we could still be looking at perhaps a major regional war breaking out between the U.S. and Iran coming up very soon, and Iran is preparing for this all the way. They've put all their military equipment on high alert, and they've also been helping the proxy forces in several different regions of the Middle East shoot down Reaper drones that the United States is flying for intel flights. So certainly the Iran situation is still very tense, so we'll be keeping an eye on that one as well, and that's a very big development happening as of this morning. So jumping into our next post here and moving on to a different front of news, we have a post from the Israel radar, and today we've gotten more visual confirmation of large Turkish military convoys entering central Syria today, according to recent reports. And despite Israeli threats, Turkey is serious about establishing a military foothold. And as of yesterday, we heard statements from both the Turks and the Israelis that they do not want to go to war with one another, but at the same time, Israel is still committed to not letting Turkey take over the former bases of the Assad regime inside of central Syria. So it's not really clear at this point what's going to take place because, of course, they don't want war, but it looks like the Turks are still moving in quite heavily, which could provoke something out of necessity from the Israeli side. So let's take a look and see the equipment moving in. And there you have it, a bunch of military equipment being moved in on trucks by the Turkish side. And as you can see, there are some of their Turkish vehicles right there moving in. I don't know the name of that vehicle actually, but here comes a semi-truck with one of those boxes on the back, which could be a mobile command center or perhaps carrying cargo. And we do have some more trucks moving in as well. They're in one big convoy, and these are allegedly the Turks moving into central Syria. And also that guy right there almost swerved right over that motorcycle. That was quite crazy. But the rest of them are all coming in right here. And this is visual confirmation that they're once again still moving into central Syria on the Turkish side. So there is that video showing that confirmation. But with that, it's now time to move on from our Middle Eastern news and on to our next post here, which goes to First Squawk, and this is moving into another very large piece of news breaking out this morning. The China-US trade war is getting out of hand extremely quickly, and this morning we have heard that the Chinese Commerce Ministry says that if the US side is bent on having its own way, the Chinese side will follow it to the end. So the Chinese are not backing down, and once again their Commerce Ministry officials are coming out and saying that they are willing to take this as deep as it needs to go in order to get their way, and the United States is generally saying the same thing as well. So right now, neither side, China nor the United States, is willing to bend on this issue, which indicates this is going to get much worse before it gets better. So that's what we're hearing from the Chinese side. But moving on to our next post here, this one goes to unusual whales. And we can see that China is also taking retaliatory measures inside of China in regards to U.S. companies operating on their soil, and we've heard today that China is to investigate intellectual property benefits of U.S. companies operating in China due to the U.S. tariffs. And if you know anything about China, that is extremely hypocritical because China is known to have a major problem with the theft of intellectual property from the United States. So for them to say this about us, that's quite crazy. That's very hypocritical actually, and quite crazy to hear, but it just shows you that China is taking retaliatory measures to get even for these recent U.S. tariff measures that are being put on their country. So they're getting upset and they're taking action to try to get even with us, and we can see that right there in the post. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Jakai Heinrich. And this is the big daddy piece of news right here when it comes to the whole China-U.S. situation. We're hearing that China has missed the deadline to remove the retaliatory tariffs that they placed on rare minerals going to the United States, and now the US has imposed an additional 50% tariff on China, bringing the total to 104% on Chinese imports to the United States starting tomorrow. And that is a huge one right there. That is largely considered a nuclear option when it comes to this trade war on the US side. So the US has taken the first very large shot across the bow with this one right here, and China is set to replicate that on their side, making this a very, very large issue that is going to get out of hand very quickly. And of course, when trade wars start getting a little bit too out of hand, that can boil over into a real hot war type situation, not necessarily between the United States and China, but of course there is always the looming threat of a Taiwan invasion by China, and that could accelerate that very rapidly. And we have heard over the last couple of days that it sounds like China is rapidly accelerating that to just a couple of months when they're actually going to pull off this invasion instead of taking years to actually get around to it. So it sounds like it's getting very heated, and we're certainly watching that one as well. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Inside Geopolitics. And we've also gotten big news out of the Koreas today. Today we've heard that 10 North Korean soldiers violated the military demarcation line between the two Koreas, and South Korea fired warning shots, and then the North Korean soldiers returned back to North Korea. So once again, we are seeing a major border violation today by the North Koreans, and this is just at a very bad time, of course, when tensions are boiling over between pretty much every country on the planet right now between each other. We're seeing right now the North Koreans do a major provocation against South Korea as of this morning. So a pretty big one right here, and South Korea actually fired right around the soldiers to get them to return to their side, and they did. But of course, this is North Korean testing of the border to see exactly where they can be detected and where they can't be detected. So we are seeing that once again this morning, another escalation in the Koreas. But moving on to our last post of the day, this one goes to Polymarket Intel. And if you thought we had enough chaos going on, we've got yet even more chaos going on, and this time the chaos is happening in Mexico, because we've heard that the U.S. administration is considering launching drone strikes against the drug cartels in Mexico, according to NBC News. And those strikes would be carried out with Reaper drones and going in and taking out those cartels. But we've heard today from the Mexican president that they say the country would reject any U.S. military action on its soil, and adding that it would not resolve anything. So once again, the Mexican government is not very happy about the idea of the U.S. sending in drones to strike on their territory, and so far that is causing another diplomatic issue between the United States and Mexico now. So the United States is fighting a lot of different battles on various different fronts right now, diplomatically and also in a wartime sense as well. So a lot of stuff going on at once, and that's of course a time when the things could boil over between one of these sources. So we are seeing that once again today. But with that, folks, that is actually our last piece of news of the day. But before you go, smack the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well if you already haven't, for more daily short war updates just like this one. And also, if you watch the video to this point, go down to the comments and put LSA, that's 3 letters, LSA in the comments, and let us know you watched to this point in the video. And also, huge shout out for all the kind words in the comments. We do see those every single video, and we do appreciate that very much. Also, if you want to support the channel financially, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for Patreon, where you can go over there and sign up for a monthly membership and support the channel that way, which is a very big help, and we appreciate all of our Patreon supporters very much. And with that, folks, be sure to join us tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. We do believe we will have a live stream tonight because the Enforcer is feeling on the mend, at least for right now. Hopefully he stays that way, and we will likely have a live stream tonight. So be sure to join us at 10 p.m. Eastern here on the YouTube channel for our nightly war news stream, where we will cover the rest of the news happening throughout the day. But with that, folks, thank you all for watching. We'll see you all tonight, hopefully, and with that, bye-bye for now.